Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches, guys. I am your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. We are back with another fantastic episode for y'all. It is week 9 of fantasy football. Thursday night football starts tonight. Ravens, Dolphins. It's hopefully going to be a good one, we'll see. But had to come in here. We have to make sure we talk about week 9 and all the favorable and unfavorable matchups. So if you haven't been listening to the coaches this year, this season we're doing a lot of top 10 favorable and unfavorable matchups per each positions based on fantasy points per game allowed. No coach shout out tonight. He had a busy week, guys. So it's just me. You're going to have me tonight. But don't worry. It's going to be a nice, easy, quick episode here. Things will go quick. We'll get a lot of quick takes in. And we'll kind of get out of here in no time. So without wasting any more time, guys, let's get into some fantasy football talk here. Starting here, as always, at the top, looking at quarterbacks with favorable matchups for week 9. And again, this is the top 5 for this week here. Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Brock Purdy / Mac Jones, Sam Darnold, and Geno Smith. So starting at the top, Kyler Murray is expected to play on Monday Night Football. So again, there is some concern because obviously we don't know 100% for sure if that is 100% yet, obviously. So if you're going to play Murray, if you're going to take that fantastic matchup against the Cowboys, you might want to get Jacoby Brissett just in case, who, again, would be a pretty solid option if Kyler Murray cannot go this week here. But again, it is Monday Night Football, so if you choose to start Murray and you don't have anyone else, you're going to be shut out of luck because obviously they play the Cowboys, and Dak Prescott more than likely has already been played unless people have both Dak and Kyler Murray. So Kyler Murray is a good must start, but just have an insurance plan with that. Daniel Jones is a really good play as well. Steelers have been really favorable to quarterbacks this season here, and Daniel Jones has just put up solid numbers. And the one good thing that we're going to like this week a lot is that the Steelers have a really strong run defense here, and the Colts have been relying on Jonathan Taylor to really just thrive with them in fantasy. That might not be the case this weekend for your week 9 matchups. So expect maybe a little bit more Daniel Jones in the passing game, getting 2 or 3 touchdowns in this game against the Steelers. It should be more of a higher scoring game. On to the 49ers. They play the Giants. We still don't know if Brock Purdy's playing yet or not in week 9. If Brock Purdy plays, I think you can start him. I think same thing with Mac Jones. The matchup's a lot easier. Giants in a spot that quarterbacks have been able to thrive in fantasy, which we all do like. Going over Sam Darnold. I'm a little concerned with Sam Darnold this week here. I just don't think that this matchup is as favorable as many people may think, even though on paper the Commanders do give up a lot in the points per game to quarterbacks. But coming off a bye, I do have some concerns that Sam Darnold is just too heavily focused on JSN, which we love for fantasy. But I think this could be a game where we could see a couple rushing touchdowns and Sam Darnold, 300 yards, 1 touchdown kind of game. I think this could be somewhat of a trap game for Donald this week in fantasy. Similar thing with Geno Smith coming off a bye here. Geno Smith was averaging like 12 fantasy points per game prior to his bye, and they play the Jacksonville Jaguars. While the matchup is somewhat favorable, it's hard for me to trust Geno Smith in this matchup here until he kind of shows it again. Again, like I said, he's averaged around 12 fantasy points per game in the last few weeks. So Geno Smith for me is someone that I am sitting in week 9. Some more favorable matchups for week 9 for quarterbacks. Caleb Williams, he plays the Bengals this week here. I'm hopeful that the guy we're going to talk about next, Joe Flacco, is starting this week. But again, I expect that Bears-Bengals game hopefully to be a higher scoring game, which gives Caleb Williams some opportunity to have a higher scoring game. He's been kind of on the downtrend the last few weeks here, but I think there is a rebound for him in week 9 against this Bengals secondary that has been pretty bad this season. So, and then obviously the Bengals, Joe Flacco, Jake Browning. Joe Flacco did practice again today after a couple days ago, potentially him not playing in week 9. Again, it's still a possibility, but if Joe Flacco is playing, you start him. If it's Jake Browning, I may have less desire to want to play him, even though he's got good wide receivers. So heading over to the quarterbacks with bad matchups this week, all unfavorable matchups. Bo Nix is number one here. Bo Nix, again, has been on fire over the last 5 quarters, they say, 8 touchdowns. But I think this is where things kind of hit reality for him a little bit in this matchups. Again, he played the Cowboys last week. He played the Giants, 2 matchups that, are favorable for quarterbacks. Now he gets the Houston Texans, who allow the fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. They only allow around 10.5 fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this year. And I think this could be a really lower scoring game where it is like a 13-16 game and lower scoring. I think Bo Nix, for me, it's hard to want to sit him, but for me, I have him as a sit. Patrick Mahomes is up next here, and I think you start Patrick Mahomes still. He's been fantastic the entire season. He's been a nice resurgent player in fantasy football after the last few years have been a little bit disappointing, but that game with the Buffalo Bills is always going to be something that people are going to want to watch. It's going to be entertainment TV here, and Mahomes is going to do everything he can to win that game against Buffalo here. I really like that matchup there a lot for him. Just the opportunity of having a higher scoring game. I think Mahomes is a good start. Going back to the Broncos-Houston game, CJ Stroud. Again, this is the 3rd best defense against quarterbacks this year. And again, Stroud has done well the last few weeks here, which has been a nice upgrade to his play. But Denver's been a really strong defense. I know Patrick Surtain's not there anymore, but it's still an elite defense overall. I think CJ Stroud is going to struggle in this matchup. That's why I have him as a sit. Head over to Drake May. Drake May has been able to do no wrong, unfortunately, this season here for fantasy. He's always been able to put up 2 or 3 touchdowns, and he gets 40 to 60 rushing yards almost every single week in fantasy. The Falcons just gave up 4 touchdowns to Tua, and I think Drake May should just be fine in this matchup. I'm not overly concerned with the Falcons secondary. It's been very inconsistent. Head over to Josh Allen. Like I said, with Mahomes, I expect that Chiefs-Bills game to be a higher scoring game, and Josh Allen's going to have to probably use his legs a little bit more than usual. Usually in these matchups against the Chiefs, you see Josh Allen just doing it himself there, and I expect him to be a really strong start this week in fantasy as well. Some more sits this week or unfavorable matchups. Michael Penix Jr. may be back this week. It could be Kirk Cousins too, but either or, it's a sit for me. I can't trust either one of them in fantasy. They haven't really shown it. Kirk Cousins was horrendous last week, and Michael Penix really hasn't done anything outside of 1 game this year. Cam Ward, again, you continue to sit him. Another bad matchup for him. He's in a lot of bad matchups this year for the rookie, but you consider to sit him. Tyler Shuck is getting his first official start this week with Spencer Rattler heading to the bench. They play the Rams. I don't expect much from him in his first game. He didn't look overly promising in his in that second half start last week. Dak Prescott, you still start him. Again, Cardinals have been a pretty decent defense overall, but I think, like they said, this game should be pretty solid overall for Dak Prescott to kind of rebound after last week's mediocre performance. So I do expect him to be able to bounce back. Again, quarterbacks tend to do a little bit better on prime time. So I like Dak Prescott as a bounce back guy this week. So heading over to the running back position, guys. These are running backs with the favorable matchups for this week based on their fantasy points per game. Starting at the top, the best matchup for every running back this week is DeAndre Swift. As long as DeAndre Swift is playing, which he did not practice today, so keep that in mind. But if he starts, you play him. He is a fantastic play this week for fantasy. And then Kyle Monangai, if Swift plays, he is a high risky upside flex play. You put him in your flex spot and hope that he gets 60 to 70 yards somehow too on a big play and a touchdown. But if DeAndre Swift were to miss, Kyle Monangai is a must-start option this week here. I don't really think Roschon Johnson's going to see that much work. I think it would be Monangai taking the full workload in a plus matchup. Kamai Vidal, again, he's another stardom right now. He's been solid the last 2 weeks here. Gets a great matchup against the Titans run defense that has been atrocious this year. I'm putting him back in the lineup this week in fantasy. Bam Knight is a sneaky, solid sleeper option this week in fantasy. He's had some tough matchups over his last few starts, but this week here he plays the Cowboys, and the Cowboys run defense is a favorable matchup. We saw RJ Harvey run off for 3 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins last week also had a really solid week. So for me, it's Bam Knight. They might bring back Michael Carter, but for me, I think they trust Bam to handle the workload until Trey Benson gets back. And for this week, he's a solid sleeper. Heading over to the Kansas City, Kareem Hunt, Bradford Smith, they played the Buffalo Bills. The Bills this week here. I got a question in the chat. Hey, Albert, how are you? The Bills are a team that allows the fourth highest expected run rate, which means runs of 15 plus yards. And Isaiah Pacheco is dealing with an injury that's going to keep him week to week right now. There's a good chance he doesn't play this week here. I would be shocked if he does. If so, Hunt is a solid RB2 option there. Bradford Smith is a high risky upside flex pay in PPR leagues. Both there would be considered flexible starts, sleeper options this week for me. Christian McCaffrey, obviously you start him. He'll have a bounce back week against the New York Giants for sure. So don't be scared of what we saw last week from McCaffrey. And then one other quarter running back that has another favorable matchup is Chase Brown this week here. Plays the Bears. Solid start for him. Chase Brown has been a much more efficient running back over the last few weeks and able to score touchdowns. You start him. All right, heading to the unfavorable matchups for running backs this week here. Rico Dowling and Chuba Hubbard. Now, this is a tough one because obviously both these guys have been people that have been starting. You maybe have to start them, obviously. For me, I think Rico at best is a flex play. I don't think there's a high upside play. I think it's like a 7 to 9 point game for Rico. And Chuba, if he doesn't score, I think you're looking at 5 to 7 points at best. Again, the Packers are one of the best run defenses in football. I think Rico might have the best shot on it. He's the decent flex play. Alvin Kamara, for me, he's a sit. Unless you're forced to start him, like he's a sit for me. Like I'm starting Rico over him. Like I'm starting maybe Aaron Jones over him. Like he's just not getting the workload that you want in fantasy right now. And he's not seeing targets in the passing game, which has always been a big key of his fantasy value. And they play the Rams this week, and the Rams have a really strong run defense, and they're coming off that bye. I'm sitting Kamara. Bijan Robinson, expect to bounce back from him. I'm starting him still. Tyler Algier, I'm going to sit him. Don't be surprised if he scores a rushing touchdown and takes one away from Robinson, but I'm not trusting Algier this week. Jordan Mason, I'm sitting Jordan Mason there. I expect that the Lions are going to be up in this game, which I think if that's the case, the Vikings will abandon the run early. Aaron Jones is the most favorable PPR guy as a flex play just because of his ability as a receiving back. But again, I think they're going to be down overall. And then you look at James Cook playing the Kansas City Chiefs here. You still start him. I think you should expect a much lower stat line compared to what we saw last week from him, obviously. But he's still a startable option. He's still seeing the bulk of the work on the offense there, and I don't expect that to change. Hopefully he can get a couple of targets this week in fantasy, something he hasn't really done too much of in the last few weeks. And some more running backs with unfavorable matchups. Jaylen Warren, I'm sitting him unless it's full PPR. That's the only way I see him being a decent 10 to 12 point fantasy guy. He just rushing isn't really well, and the Colts run defense have been a pretty strong unit overall. Bill Crosby Merritt, I'm sitting him. He's been disappointing. He's had favorable matchups and just has done nothing with him. I know Jaden Daniels may be coming back, and hopefully that helps him, but I just don't, there's no faith for me to want to even start him against Seattle this week. So I'm sitting him. Ashton Genty, I'm always intrigued with a running back, well, not a running back, but a rookie coming off a bye week. The Jags run defense has been solid overall, but Genty is seeing a bulk of the workload in the offense. For me, he's still a flex at best. Jonathan Taylor, obviously he's been on fire this season here. You start him. There's nothing else to say about that. J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. Dobbins is still a solid flex play overall. You still want to start him for most part. R.J. Harvey, I don't count on a 3 touchdown game for him again. Limited touches and limited snaps, and still scored multiple touchdowns. I don't expect that to be a consistent option for him in fantasy football. So heading over to the wide receivers, guys. Marvin Harrison Jr. has a plus matchup against that Cowboys horrendous secondary, and you should expect him to have a big bounce back game this week here. Whoever plays quarterback, if it's Brissett, it's even better. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, you start both of them. Overall, Lions secondary has been very favorable for wide receivers this year. Justin Jefferson has been really good against the Lions over his career. Jordan Addison has just been overall on fire this season. So even with J.J. McCarthy coming back, I'm still more than fine starting both those guys. Juwan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne. I think Jennings is the decent flex play, sleeper options. They're both sleeper options, but Jennings is the more flex value play. He's the one seeing the target since his return. Kendrick Bourne has kind of taken a back seat the last 2 weeks. In terms of targets, he's no longer that favorite guy from Mac Jones. And if Brock Purdy comes back, it's all Juwan Jennings. Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. Like, I don't want to say they're must-start options. Again, it's a favorite matchup against the Raiders overall, and hopefully Thomas is healthy, and also Travis Hunter gets more involved and more design plays to go on to him. I think they're solid flex plays overall. I wouldn't call them must-start options, but they're startable options this week for fantasy. DK Metcalf, I'm going to start him. Obviously, he's really the only pass catcher out there outside of the tight end position. He's going to see his 7 targets in this game, and hopefully one of them gets him in the end zone for us in fantasy. All right. The rest of the favorable matchups for wide receivers, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker. I think they're flex at best. I am a little concerned on their target shares with Brock Bowers slated to return in week 9. Myers, they may use him and try to flash him off in a big game so that people want to trade for him, because the trade deadline is next Tuesday. So what better is to get Myers 8 to 10 targets and allow him to do what he does best on the field. So I might like Myers a little bit more than Tucker this week just for that reason. The Colts play the Pittsburgh Steelers. Michael Pittman Jr., good starting option. He's been really solid for fantasy this year, being the target leader on this offense. Alec Pierce is a dart throw kind of guy. I think the Steelers have a lot of big plays on their secondary, and I think Pierce could be like a 4 for 84 kind of player game this Sunday. So I do like Pierce as well. And Josh Downs is like a floor play. If you're looking for a solid 8 to 10 points, I think he'll offer you that in fantasy. I guess I do expect that game to be a little bit more competitive for us to help our fantasy rosters. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. If Joe Flacco plays, you play both of them. I'm pretty happy with both of them. I'm hoping that we can see more than 2 targets for T. Higgins, though. But if it's Jake Browning, I'm only starting Chase, and T. Higgins is going to ride the bench. And then for Seattle, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp. Obviously, Jackson Smith-Njigba is best player in fantasy right now. You start him no matter what. He's seeing a ridiculous target share this coming season. Cooper Kupp, I think there's decent flex value for him. Overall, I do like the matchup for him in the slot a little bit as they mix it back and forth between him and Jackson Smith-Njigba. So I'm okay with Cooper Kupp this week in fantasy coming off a bye. Hopefully there's some more targets going his way. Some favorable, unfavorable matchups for wide receivers. Now we're going back to Nico Collins and Jalen Knoll. Christian Kirk may play this week, so that might be a switcheroo right there with Knoll. But if they do play, I think Nico Collins is the only one I'm really going to trust. And that's very hard to trust him because this matchup against the Texans, or not the Texans, but the Broncos, is a really tough one for wide receivers this year. So for me, at best, Collins is going to be a flex play, but I don't 100% trust him in fantasy this week. The Bills, Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, I'm sitting them overall. Coleman has just been a real disappointment this season, just not seeing the targets that we want from him. And Shakir might be a decent 5 for 60 option there, but he hasn't really overly done that well against the Chiefs in his career. They don't really throw to the wide receivers. They use really just Josh Allen to do all the heavy lifting, so in fantasy. But I'm not overly wanting to start one of them. Again, if it is going to be someone, Shakir, but yeah. Going over to Denver Broncos. This is a really tough Houston versus Broncos game here. Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin. I do have them as sits this week. I am really concerned about that Houston secondary and how good it is for fantasy. They are home, Houston, so I think there's even a little bit more of an edge on their plate there. Sutton, I don't want to start at all. I think there's just too much variable with him and the role that he has in this Denver offense. Troy Franklin may be a decent flex play just because of his role and how often he's used in the red zone. Bo Nix seems to find him consistently in that role there, so I don't hate that. Going over the Packers, Matthew Golden, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. It is really tough because they in Green Bay like to spread that ball way too much around, and it's very frustrating for fantasy owners right now. Matthew Golden has just been really nothing, and after last week's performance, how could you even trust him? So I don't get it. Romeo Doubs is a decent flex play. I'm kind of okay with that. It's not a big deal. I don't think he's going to do overly that great. Christian Watson, again, 4 for 48 last week there. That was a solid game out of him. He looked really good. But does that mean it's going to repeat itself? Maybe. The Panthers have not allowed a lot of wide receivers to kind of go off on them overall. And if one will, I really do think it's Dobbs. I think Christian Watson is more of a dart throw option for us in fantasy. Heading over to the Titans, DK and Alec Alomeo. DK has been just really solid for us in fantasy football without Calvin Ridley on the field. No Ridley. I do believe that DK is a flexible option for us in fantasy, just because of his role and how often the targets are coming his way. Adebayo has been, you want him more, but haven't got it, unfortunately. And until he shows it again, I really don't want to start him in fantasy right now. So on the back half of the unfavorable matchup, Stephon Diggs, Kayshon Boutte versus the Atlanta Falcons here. Stephon Diggs, solid PPR guy, I think, this week. I think his matchup's a lot better than Boutte on the outside, something where the Falcons have been better at stopping the outside wide receiver play than across the middle. So I do like Diggs a lot more. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, you start both of them. They've proven they can work together, and some weeks one will be better than the others. Then the Lions, you have Amon St. Brown. You obviously start him. He's a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy right now. Jameson Williams, I'm sitting him after last week's performance, even coming off a bye. How do you trust him in fantasy? I just don't see how you can. So I'm sitting him. And then Rishi Rice and Xavier Worthy, I'm starting both those guys. Obviously, I trust Rice a lot more than Worthy, but I'm still trusting them in a plus match. Not a plus matchup, but in a matchup where I do expect it to be higher scoring. I do believe Mahomes will rely on his wide receivers, especially if Pacheco is out. All right. Over to the last positions, guys. So just a quick episode, guys. You get a lot of great fantasy intake real quick here for you in 30 minutes or less. That's what I like doing for y'all. Over to tight ends. Colston Loveland has the best matchup this weekend for tight ends. The Bengals give up 15 fantasy points per game to tight ends. If there's no Cole Kmet, this has to be the week Colston Loveland goes off. And if you're looking for a tight end still, this is the guy to take a shot on. Tyler Warren, Steelers have been really favorable for tight ends this year. Tyler Warren is leading this team most weeks in targets, and I would continue to play him this week in fantasy. Obviously, he's been fantastic this year. Staying in the same game here, Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth for the Steelers. Both sleeper options here. I wish you could just start a player called the Steelers tight ends, because one of them because they would be a really good player. But I think Jonnu Smith is the one to start if you're going to. I think Pat Freiermuth did miss practice this week, but Jonnu Smith should have a decent play, good sleeper option. Kyle Pitts, I have him as a start this week here. I like Kyle Pitts a lot. I think the New England Patriots have been very favorable for the tight end position this year here. And Kyle Pitts showed us last week he can be that underneath player for this offense here, especially if they're going to be behind, which I do expect them to be behind in this matchup here. And again, if there's no Drake London, which I hope there is, Kyle Pitts is absolutely even a better must-start option. AJ Barner, sleeper option for me. The good matchup against the Washington Commanders. I think what we saw the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season here, Barner has been a solid sleeper option for us in fantasy. My only concern is Elijah Arroyo. Did they give him more opportunity following the bye week? We'll have to wait and see that. But Barner's been a solid guy. Get you probably 10 to 12 fantasy points in most weeks right now. So going over to the back half here of the favorable matchups, Jontavian Sanders, you sit him. The Panthers tight ends have just not been able to produce for us in fantasy this year, and I just can't trust them even in a favorable matchup. Tucker Kraft is going to have a monster game this week here. Start him. Jake Ferguson, I expect a bounce back from him. Cardinals have been a favorable matchup to the tight end position this year. I know the targets have been down for Ferguson, but I'm really okay going back to him this week. Zach Ertz, again, no Terry McLaurin this week, so give me Zach Ertz as a solid option to start him in fantasy because Jaden Daniels is back, and Jaden Daniels does like himself some Zach Ertz. So, right, and then just the last 2 slides here, guys, and we're all done. Unfavorable matchups for tight ends. Hunter Henry, you sit him. Hunter Henry came in the week last week with just 2 targets. Can't have that for us in fantasy. And the Falcons have been averaging 3.5 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. It's really shitty. So Hunter Henry is just someone I don't trust right now. Travis Kelce, you start him. He's looked good the last couple weeks now. I would prefer other options if I had the opportunity to, but you still start him unless you really do have a better option for us and for yourself in fantasy. Dalton Kincaid, for me, it's a sit. It could be a better week for him. I do believe it's a touchdown or bust kind of thing for him in fantasy. Like if he doesn't score a touchdown, his fantasy week's going to be bad. It could be a touchdown week because I do have the Bills wide receivers as sits, so someone else has to step up. So maybe Dalton Kincaid, and I might be eating my sit awards this week for fantasy. Evan Ingram, he's a sit. I just don't trust him overall. I don't really see the upside on him. Like he's going to probably give you a 4 for 30. And again, that's fine for fantasy tight end there, but it could be worse than that. So I'm kind of off on him this week. Rondo Gadsden, I'm starting him. I know the matchup isn't as favorable for him, but I do believe that they're going to attack the middle of the field, something where I think he'll be able to show off his speed and have better mismatch opportunities. Again, he's not a regular tight end. He is a very athletic tight end and someone who can use speed to win, separate. And Gadsden, I think I'm still starting him. He's just been such a hot streak. You have to play him in fantasy. And the last few, Hunter Long. Does anyone know who that even is? Yeah, he's the tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars. You sit him this week here playing the Raiders. Theo Johnson is a sit. Don't trust him against the 49ers, who've been really good against tight ends this year. And Juwan Johnson, for me, I think it comes down to touchdown or bust. It probably should say if he can get 7 targets or bust, because if he doesn't get at least 7 targets, it could be a bust game. And I don't know who to trust right now with Tyler Shuck at the starting quarterback job right now. But that is going to wrap us up for the night, guys. That's everything and everyone right there. If you have any fantasy questions, please feel free to consistently hit us up over on X at Coach's Fantasy or at my own X account at Coach Stephen P. You also can find us over on TikTok at the Fantasy Coaches there as well. I always post these slideshows over there afterwards. So if you have any more fantasy questions, please just give us a DM. We're more than happy to help you out. Like I said, guys, we don't make any money off this. We do this for the pure of our heart, and we just enjoy talking fantasy football. So if you have any other fantasy questions, hit us up. And yeah, that's all I really got for you guys. Quick 30-minute episode. We appreciate you guys all for tuning in. As always, we'll be back next week for some more fantasy football advice for you guys. But until then, guys, thanks for listening.